Another edition of our Rotary Unplugged, and I am lucky to call our next guest kind of a co-host here on our Rotary Unplugged. We get to dig into the minds of fellow Rotarians, and it's certainly fun to dig into each other's minds as well. And I get to dig into yours. Craig Clark, I'm glad you're here on behalf of Clark Communications. Now let's talk about you and Rotary. Hi.
Hello, thanks for having me on your podcast. I'm a big fan.
Yes. Well, let's let you know this is yours too. It's Rotaries, and as
Our
well as
podcast.
our podcast. But
We
what a
split the revenue evenly. Let's just be
that is
50-50
a check's
partners
in the
here.
mail. Yeah. Well, it is all about getting the word out, and yeah,
Oh yeah.
always jump right in. What do you explain when it comes to this opportunity, Craig Clark, to be in Rotary?
Yeah. That's a good question. And I really think of one word, and that's privilege, right? We have the privilege of being involved in a community, and I have the privilege of being in a position where I can give back and get involved in that way. I don't take that for granted. And finally, it's a privilege just to serve alongside fellow Rotarians who think the same way, community-minded, giving, selfless. That's a real honor. So I kind of think of that word when I think about what it means to have that opportunity.
And how did Rotary come to you?
Yeah, working in public relations here in Grand Rapids for the last 30 years, I'm kind of been adjacent to the organization, right? I've had clients be presenters. I've gone as a guest. I've just been aware of it and, like I said, adjacent to it. But it wasn't until a couple years ago, or actually no more than a year ago now, I finally got off my last kind of governing board, of which you're on, I think, every other one in town. I don't know how you do that. That's a podcast in itself, Shelley. We'll have to talk
It's
about
about
that someday.
you.
But I just realized I wanted to get involved in the community and, serving on a board is a privilege, but, governing boards, it's a little different. So the opportunity to get involved with an organization that just gives so much and gets involved in new ways, opportunities to serve and learn about community organizations and individuals that I otherwise probably wouldn't have found. So it just felt like the right time to kind of be in that position in my life, my career, where I could kind of serve in that new capacity.
Hmm. Hence, how would you advise someone to become a member?
Yeah, good question. And I I don't want to be rude, but I would just say check yourself, right? What is your reason for getting involved? If it's for sales and new business development, this isn't for you. There's plenty of those clubs in town, and I think we've all been to those, and there's a time and place for that. But this is an organization about serving. Giving rather than getting is really what I think about it. So I would say if you're looking for an organization where you can get involved, meet people that are also community minded, curious, and friendly, this is for you. But if it's primarily to kind of grow your business, that might come over time with authentic relationships. But if you're coming into it more about, getting than giving, then that's going to be a little bit of a problem. So check yourself.
Hmm. Any favorite community service activities you've taken part in, Craig?
Yeah, yeah, that's again one of the best parts for me, just getting involved with organizations that I've heard of or maybe interacted with on a professional level, but rolling up your sleeves and getting involved, it's been really fun. And one that really stands out, and it's an organization I was aware of and had done a little work for, but never really volunteered, and that was Community Food Club.
Hmm.
J.R. Roberts, about a year ago, had a get together where we packaged some spices and other things to stock the shelves of this grocery store essentially in the southwest side of Grand Rapids. And it just was so kind of unique that I'm in this little room of this community food club, and we're literally packaging tiny packets of spices for some ethnic spices and whatnot. And then so I spent, I don't know, 2 hours packaging, and it was just this tiny little amount of work that I did, and I put it on this tiny little corner of a shelf in a big store. And it just felt like, but that's such a big impact for people that need or want that spice that otherwise maybe isn't available especially at a price point. So it's just a reminder of how every little bit helps and it goes a long way. So that just really still stands out to me.
And what do you get from hosting Rotary Unplugged?
As a curious person, I love asking questions, and that makes it really easy to host. And sometimes JR has to put in a friendly reminder to kind of keep it under an hour for my questions. No, I don't go that long, but it's just really fun to get to know people in that way, and not only the personal and the professional, but just their Rotary story. So many unique stories. So for me, working in public relations, I'm always kind of coordinating interviews and preparing for these sort of things. So I just thought it was a fun way to kind of get behind it a little bit more and be
Wonderful.
like you a little bit.
Okay. Pay your dues. Craig, we do dig into you as a
Oh yeah.
Rotarian. So, 5 fun facts. We begin with you working in a hospital morgue in college.
Yeah, hasn't everybody? Oh, no? Okay. Yeah, that was I grew up in Lansing and I was going to Michigan State and all my friends were working at Sparrow Hospital, really large hospital in Lansing. It was just a good paying job. So I didn't know and I got a job in housekeeping. And the first day the supervisor said, "You might have to clean the morgue." And I was like, "Whatever. I don't even really know what housekeeping is. I just wanted the job." So the very first day I'm in the morgue and I realized really quick what the morgue is. And I ended up having to clean the morgue for my job for about 2 years. And that very first day was still, and I'm not going to get into detail, but one of the worst days of the morgue. But other than that, people think it's probably a pretty exciting job, but actually it was pretty dead in there.
To-do.
But
That's called preparation. All right. Speaking of to-do, did you play in a rock band?
yeah, I tell people college was the best 7 years of my life, and I'm not an attorney. I was going to Michigan State, just had no real focus on what I wanted to be when I grew up. And had played drums just kind of in garage bands in high school and met some friends and knew some friends that played instruments and we just kind of started up a band and had a lot of fun doing it and started to get paying gigs, playing at frat houses at Michigan State and then some of the bars around there and then kind of getting picked up to play around the state and just had the time of my life. I always wanted to be a rock star. So I felt like this was my 15 minutes, right? Get it out of my system and then I can grow up. And ironically, it was while I was drumming, I ended up getting tendonitis in my arms. So, little message from above. Maybe it's time to move on to things. But as I said, I was working at a hospital and I did a job shadow with corporate communications. So I kind of knew what I wanted to be when I grew up. So it was kind of easy to quit the band and finally refocus and finish my degree in communications. But yeah, that's a whole other podcast. Some stories I could tell you about the band days, but that was a lot of fun too.
Yes, yes. Quite the drummer. You can fill in as needed, I'm sure. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
High school looks like you had a little job where you made a buck a day, and I need you to expand on this. I don't know if it was legal.
It's when I found my entrepreneurial spirit, is what I tell people. But yeah, okay. So enough time's gone by, I can mention things, and I don't think my parents are going to yell at me. But senior in high school, was walking down the hallway and I found a pad, one of those full pads of hall permits. Like you got to go to your counselor's office, you got to get an excuse permit to leave. And I thought, well, that's interesting. Let's see if these actually work. So I gave one to a friend and he wrote his name, whatever he had to fill out. And then another person found out and said, "Are you charging?" And I'm like, "I am charging for those. Yes, I am." So I dollar a permit, and turns out there's a fair amount in that pad. And so I was an enterprising young man. I think it might have been illegal. I don't know. I didn't read the handbook in high school, but I don't think I was supposed to do that. But the last day of high school, my English teacher, because I had kind of been going to the counselor's office a lot, and really that's McDonald's for a Egg McMuffin. She turned in, she gave me all the hall passes that I had been using and said, "You've been misspelling your counselor's name."
Oh my.
So I got in a little bit of trouble that day. That happened to be the last day of my senior year, so I had to do a lot of schoolwork. So, yep. But hey, now I learned how to make a buck, and I also learned what's illegal, and turns out that's
There
illegal.
we
So,
go. Let's make sure your
dumb
kids
move,
learned that way back then. All right, Craig,
indeed.
what is this Ben Stiller moment that you often find yourself in?
Yeah, my wife kind of coined that term. You know how in the Ben Stiller movies, he's always kind of finding himself in an awkward position. He's innocent, but he's kind of looked as if he's guilty or he's doing something wrong. My life is full of those moments, and it's almost laughable. And about every time we sit down from dinner, my kids are like, "What happened to Dad today?" Because there's usually something weird. Good example. Years ago at Knapp's Corner Meyer, I was checking out. I think I got like some toothpaste and deodorant. Really busy on a weekend, and the cashier said, "Hey, that handicap shopping cart at the end, could you just take that back to customer service? I'm not going to have time." I thought, sure, I'd happy to help out. So I put my little bag of DO and toothpaste in the basket, and I just start, driving it down to get about 5 feet away, and the battery dies. So I'm starting to kind of just push it by myself, and I'm kind of going against traffic. Everybody's walking out, and they're just giving me evil looks, like, "You don't need that. That's for handicapped people." And so I'm trying to tell people, like, I'm trying to be helpful, and they didn't believe that. So I just look like the evil guy. And more recently, and again, this could be its own podcast, but I was at a restaurant in downtown. I'm not going to name names. And I went to the men's room, and I noticed when I was going to leave that the handle on the door was really loose. It was a faceplate, 4 screws. And I thought, oh, I can fix this. So I went up to the bar and asked the bartender for a screwdriver. She apprehensively gave it to me, like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "God, I'll go fix this." So I go into the bathroom and I'm tightening. It's a Phillips head screw, and there's 3 screws. I get them all done. And then the fourth one, I realize is a star drive and not a Phillips head. So I thought I can do it. And so I get down on my knees. I'm kind of holding onto the door, trying to make the Phillips head work in the star drive. And then somebody opens the door,
Oh,
and it pulled out, and I fell out. Now, mind you, I've got a Phillips head screwdriver, stabbed the guy in the
oh my
upper
God.
thigh region, or as my kids used to say, the no-no square. And the manager saw that, and everybody screaming, like, "Sir, what are you doing?" And this poor guy who I literally stabbed with a screwdriver is jumping back, like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, I was trying to be helpful. And
Yeah,
they kept their cool. They didn't arrest me, but they politely asked me to stop being the maintenance guy
yeah,
at the restaurant.
yes. Would
So
you please leave the restaurant?
yeah, or maybe just leave it up to the maintenance
Well,
people. So right, I just do dumb things. I should really just stop
yeah.
doing dumb things.
You learn by your mistakes. Lastly, I know as we talk, we're in the middle of the Stanley Cup playoffs. You've hosted that trophy?
Twice. Yeah, exactly. For those of you watching, you have to hoist it above your head. You have to kiss it too. A friend in college was good friends growing up in East Kent with a former Red Wing player, Mike Knuble. And if you know anything about the NHL, when you win the Stanley Cup, each player gets to keep it for a day. And he had 2 big parties with friends and family, and I just happened to be, adjacent to that person. And they knew I was a huge Red Wings fan. So yeah, I got to hoist it twice, and time of my life for sure.
Hmm, great.
Yeah.
All right. We could probably come up with 10 fun facts, but I
Yeah, I got
digress.
plenty of weird facts anyway.
What should the, in general, you're in communications, you give advice. What should the Rotary Club of Grand Rapids put on their bucket list?
Yeah, that's a good question. I gave that a little thought, but I thought, our town is always punching above its weight, right, in terms of community, public-private partnerships, just so many of the endeavors that have main attractions here in West Michigan. And I don't know, maybe this has already happened, but I thought, shouldn't we maybe host the Rotary International Convention? I think we're big enough that we can maybe host that. I don't know, maybe we have years ago. I haven't really looked back, but I feel like we're a great host city for events like that. We are an amazing Rotary chapter. We've got so many Rotaries in the state that are also very you know, popular and successful. Why can't we host it here in Grand Rapids? So I'm not volunteering to be on that committee
I was
to
going to
form
say, I'm
that,
calling you chair.
but I feel like that'd be a big win for this organization, of course, for the city as a whole too.
Nice. Keep on communicating the great job you do with Clark Communications and,
Yeah,
of course, fellow Rotarian Craig Clark. Thanks for this
thank you.
time.
Thank you.
JR.
Hey,
Hey.
two hosts going at it. That's kind of a
Yeah, look at us
fun
go.
thing, right? Right. I get the privilege of recording these podcasts with both of these individuals, so it's nice to get to learn a little bit more about them. So
Yeah.
now, this podcast and every podcast can be found at grrotary.org/unplug. Definitely check it out there, or you can also visit them on the Apple Podcast app as well. So we hope to see you again next time. Thanks
Bye.
again.